So I'm gonna just talk a little bit about the book and why I wrote it, but what I'd like to do is answer your questions. And also, I know that this has been going on long, so I won't be offended if you sit down. You know, this is informal, have a seat right on the floor, you know, if you need to, because I want to make sure I address your questions before we have to go. But again, I wrote the book in such a way where I can tell the story of not just where I came from, but how I got involved in politics. And some of my advisors were saying, you know, if you ever want to run for office again, you shouldn't necessarily be that candid. But I chose to be real and be honest about the mistakes I've made, or you know, the blows that I've had to come up against, because it's real people who are going to bring our country back to the principles on which this country was founded. And real people have real problems. And we need everyday Americans to engage in the political process. So I wanted to write the book in a way that people might relate to. And then I closed the book after telling the story of, you know, a little bit of who I am and where I came from, and then the behind the scenes. Trust me, there's a lot of juicy details about the behind the scenes 2010 campaign. But I chose to close the book with some practical application, some policy, and then some things that I think we need to do in order to get our country back on track. And then the final chapter is a practical how-to. And I talk about how on the campaign trail, Jenny and I stopped at a gas station. When she ran in to pay for the gas, the woman behind the counter saw the O'Donnell for U.S. Senate sticker, and she said, "Oh, you know, tell your sister we're rooting for her. I really hope she wins." And she was able to very clearly articulate all of her frustrations with the Delaware political process and what she saw going on. And of course, Jenny, not just the good big sister, but the good campaign activist, said, you know, you can do more than hope. You can vote for her on November 2nd. And she said, oh, you know, I'm not that type. I'm not political. I'm not the political type. And you know what's frustrating about that? So many people have that mindset. I once had that mindset. So I share very honestly about how, you know, growing up, you think, you know, the smarter people or the richer people, they're the ones who are politically active. They're the ones who belong in the political process. But here's this woman manning the counter at a gas station who could clearly articulate her frustration, yet had this wrong mindset of that she was not worthy to be in the political process. That's what we're up against, and it is my hope that this book will resonate with women like that, with men like that, with people like that all over the country, so that you as the activists and the leaders can reach out to them and bring them into the fold, bring them into this process, and this middle class movement can propel us to victory. And I've constantly said the Tea Party isn't just conservatives, it's not just Republicans, it's Democrats, it's independents, it's everyday Americans who are disenfranchised with the career politicians who have turned Washington, who have turned Congress into a favor factory. Last night after my now infamous Piers Morgan interview, they had on the CEO of Starbucks. So I got to see some of that when I was watching how they chose to replay everything that happened. And the CEO of Starbucks said, I'm a registered Democrat, but the economic situation, and I'm paraphrasing, so I know people try to get that gotcha moment. I am paraphrasing what the CEO said on CNN last night, but it was to the effect of that he's a registered Democrat, but he attributes the economic problems that we're in to a lack of leadership. And I wholeheartedly agree. I have a chapter in my book that I call Our Follower-in-Chief. And I talk about how, while the election may have made Barack Obama our president, it didn't make him presidential. And then I lay out all the examples of where he put his finger to the wind and waited to find out what they wanted him to do before he took action. Well, guess what? No action is an action. And right now we need leadership. Right now we need stability. So I truly believe that if we as a movement can unite, if we can clearly articulate our message, and especially if the Republicans as a party can unite and stop shooting within the tent and stop pointing the fingers at each other instead of where the blame belongs, then we can make sure that Barack Obama is a one-term president. But it's a big if, and unfortunately it really is a big if. I open the book in the introduction with defining the establishment. And the establishment isn't just in the Democrats. The establishment exists in both parties. And not every incumbent is part of the establishment. Not every successful person is part of the establishment. Also, you don't have to already have made it to be of the establishment mindset. I believe the establishment is an eagerness, a willingness to step on people, to compromise your principles in order to get ahead. It exists in those who have made it and those who are still trying to make it. So you have the establishment within our party who want to try to say it's the principles that have caused the gridlock. Well, guess what? We had a debt crisis long before the Tea Party came on board. Well, guess what? You know, we had this deficit problem. The Republicans held the White House. The Republicans held both houses of Congress. And they didn't solve the problem then. So what we are doing is holding the establishment accountable. We should not be pointing the fingers at those of us who are saying the emperor has no clothes. We need to be putting the blame where it belongs, on those leaders who are going to let Barack Obama get away with threatening to veto a balanced budget amendment, with get away with failed leadership that does not put the stopgap measures in place. So again, I bring this up not to, you might say, well, isn't that a little inconsistent? You're saying we need to unite, but then you're exposing the cronyism within our own party. I'm bringing this up not to perpetuate the cronyism or not to perpetuate the infighting, but hopefully to serve as an example that the principles on which not only our party was founded, but the principles on which our country was founded are winning principles. They are the principles that made our country great and can still make our country great. We do not need to be embarrassed about them. So if the DC cocktail crowd, if the establishment will lend a hand to us, lend us their resources, lend us their organizations, take the strength and might from this grassroots organization, take the power of our principles, we will be that powerhouse that knocks out Barack Obama in 2012. Now again, I have a chapter in the back that I call the power of the soundbite. Because again, it's they try to say, for some reason you still have Karl Rove and Dana Perino attacking Rick Perry and those of us who stand on these principles. These principles are not something to be embarrassed about. If they are not resonating with people, you don't abandon those principles. Abandonment and compromise of what is right and what is good and what makes our country solid and strong and stable, that abandonment of that is what has brought us into this chaos right now. If it's not resonating with the people, you don't abandon your message, you reframe your message. Because I believe that freedom is inscribed on the heart of every individual. And I go into detail about that in the chapter called The Power of the Soundbite. Because in our longing to be loved, in our longing to be valued, in your desire to be appreciated for who you are and what you do, that is proof that we crave freedom. And when you articulate that to people, they get it and they understand it. So if we are not winning, don't change the message, reframe the message so that they can understand it.